Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Wilson, and my husband and I, his name is Billy, we were missionaries for over 30 years in Africa with the Assemblies of God. We've been retired now for, almost 4 years, and I've written down an account of the many things that happened to us and our life in Africa. And I'm not calling it a book because I haven't actually registered it or anything. It's just an account that I've written, and I thought this would be a great way to get the word out quickly and let people listen and hear, because God done so many marvelous things. And you'll get to hear, about how we met and how God called us both. And then if there's questions at the end, if I've left something out, you want to leave a comment, then you can get back to me that way. So let me go ahead and start to read, and I'm starting with chapter 1. Take my life and use me for your glory. This was a prayer I prayed as I knelt at the altar in the old Northside Assembly of God Church, downtown Fort Worth, Texas, New Year's Eve, 1971. I never dreamed that I would be married before that new year of 1972 had barely begun, and that the man I married would become an ordained minister and called to be a missionary to Africa. I met Billy Wilson in February, barely a month and a half after I prayed that prayer, that New Year's Eve prayer. And he says to me one day, "Before I ask you to marry me," he said to me in late March, "I have something I need to tell you." When I was 12 years old, God called me to Africa. And although I'm not doing anything to pursue that call, I know that one day I will. And the only way that I know how to explain my call is to say that when Billy told me this about his calling, I knew in my heart instantly that was exactly what God wanted for my life too. We married in June of 1972, and we settled down to married life. We always pushed back the thoughts of Billy becoming a minister or going to Bible school, and we pushed way back the thoughts of being missionaries. We attended a great church, Saginaw Assembly of God. Our pastor, Brother F.J. Pierce, was a fiery preacher and always allowed for the moving of the Spirit in the services. We would come home sometimes so on fire for God that the next day, Billy would go and talk to Brother Pierce and tell him that we must have more to do in the church for the Lord. We were thinking if we could just work in the church, doing everything the pastor wanted us to do, it would satisfy that tug on our hearts to do what God was actually asking us to do. Each time we went to Brother Pierce, he would give us another job in the church. So we were Sunday school teachers, youth leaders, children's church pastors, and always filled in anytime there was a need. And this continued for several years. Jennifer Amanda was born in November 1976, and in 1977, we met Brother Ray Hetty. It was at a minister's meeting. He talked to Billy and asked him to come to his church, Broadview Assembly of God, in Sampson Park, Texas. He was needing a youth pastor, and then also he would be retiring soon and wanted Billy to replace him. When we told Brother Pierce about this, he gave us his blessings. But we remained very close friends with him and his wife Lily until this day. Brother Hetty's preaching was much different than anyone we had ever heard. It was more on the line of teaching than it was preaching, and we began to learn so much about the Bible and how to live an overcoming life. Our desire to be missionaries only grew, but we still continued to only suppress it. One day, Billy's brother, David, called him, where he was a home missionary in Barrow, Alaska. He had a revival planned and had just received word that the evangelist could not make it. Would Billy be willing to come and preach for him? That was the beginning of the rest of our lives. This was in October 1978. The day that Billy returned back from Alaska, he said to me, "We are going to put the house up for sale tomorrow, and I will register for Southwestern Assembly of God College." We did just that. We sold the house and moved to Waxahachie, and Billy started Bible school. I got a job, and then at the end of Billy's graduation, I received a reward, a PhD, putting hubby through. After graduation in 1983, Billy was ordained as an Assembly of God minister in June of 1984. A few days later, we contacted Mission Headquarters, Springfield, Missouri, and began to apply for foreign mission service. I might mention that in 1981, while Billy was still in Bible school, Jason Doyle, our son, had been born, and this completed our family. After graduation, we prayed about where God would have us to live until we left for Africa. We knew our home had a parsonage that was rented out to someone, as the pastor owned his own home. So we went to Brother Hetty and we asked about living in the parsonage. He told us that the people there had always been faithful to pay the rent, and he felt he shouldn't ask them to move. Well, we just prayed again, and we asked the Lord to show us where to live after graduation, even if it meant leaving Broadview. We had continued to drive back and forth Wednesdays and weekends the whole time that Billy was in Bible school. It was about 50 miles between Sampson Park and Waxahachie, but we never let that discourage us. We stayed active in our church, had a full-time secular job, and Billy still managed to finish Bible school in 4 years. God was so good to us, protecting us on the long journeys back and forth and giving us the strength to do all that was asked of us. Oh, and about the parsonage. The week that Billy was to graduate, the people who had been renting the place got behind on their rent, and they were asked to move. Living in the parsonage was perfect for us, as Billy was given more responsibility at the church and provided a wonderful place for us to go through the whole process of getting approved to be Assembly of God World Missionaries. Now that process of becoming missionaries became long, and it's very detailed. And so if this interests you, I will come back and later, and we will read chapter 2 and see and hear how God led us to be missionaries with the Assemblies of God. Thank you for listening today. Bye-bye.